Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to give you that essential rundown of today's news, specifically tailored for your UPSC prep.
That's right. Today is April 23rd, 2025, and this is part one of our analysis.
Our goal, as always, is to unpack these key events, really get into their significance, and show you how they connect to the syllabus.
And you might notice some familiar ground. Some topics might be a bit of a revision, which is actually great for reinforcing key concepts.
Absolutely. We want to give you the critical insights, help you focus on what really matters for the exams.
So what's on the agenda today?
Okay, 3 big areas. First, we'll look at Nepal's first National Yak Day. Sounds interesting, right? And why it matters for the Himalayan region.
Yaks, okay. Then,
we're shifting gears to space. ISRO's SpaDeX mission, a successful satellite docking. Big step for India.
very significant, yes. And the third?
And finally, back to Earth, focusing on a critical waterway, the Strait of Gibraltar. Its strategic importance is huge.
Right. 3 quite different topics, but all relevant. Let's get started. Where do we begin? With the yaks.
Let's do it. Nepal's National Yak Day, observed on April 20th. What's the story here?
Well, the key driver seems to be ISRO. That's the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. They're really pushing to recognize the yak's role.
Role in what exactly?
In sustainable development across the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, or HKH. It's about highlighting their importance.
Okay, so it's more than just celebrating an animal. It's
Yeah.
about the connection, right, between the yaks and the indigenous communities.
Precisely. You've got communities like the Sherpa, Tamang, the Kali, Rai, Limbu. Their whole way of life, historically, is tied to yak herding.
Tied in terms of food security,
Yeah.
culture.
All of that. Food security, their cultural identity, even biodiversity in that very unique mountain environment, it's all linked.
Fascinating. Let's get into the specifics of the yaks themselves. Biology, geography.
Okay, so scientifically you have Bos mutus, that's the wild yak, and Bos grunniens, the domesticated one. Knowing the difference is important.
Why is that? Conservation.
Yeah, partly for conservation and understanding their ecological roles. They live way up high, alpine tundra, between 5,000 and 7,000 meters.
Wow, that's incredibly high. Alpine meadows, steppes, even desert steppes up there.
Exactly. And geographically, they're spread across the Himalayas, the Tibetan Plateau, Mongolia, bits of South Central Asia.
And for our listeners, the Indian connection. Where do we find them in India?
Right, good point for UPSC. You'll find them reared in Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and also the UTs of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh.
Got it. And physically, what makes them so special for that environment?
Well, the wild ones are bigger, maybe around 2 meters tall. Domesticated ones are smaller, but both have that really long, shaggy hair for warmth.
And the horns.
Curved horns, yeah, bigger on the males. But the really amazing part is their adaptation to the altitude.
How so?
Their lungs. Nearly 3 times the capacity of regular cattle. And they have smaller red blood cells. It helps them get enough oxygen where the air is thin.
Incredible adaptation. And they just eat grasses.
Pretty much. Hardy grasses, alpine plants, whatever you can find up there. They're herbivores.
So, beyond the biology, how vital are the domesticated yaks to the people?
Oh, indispensable. Milk, meat. But crucially, they're pack animals. Think about trying to move goods across those high mountain passes without them.
Huge for local economies, trade, just basic connectivity, I imagine.
Absolutely. And they're used in climbing and trekking, too. They can get up to, 20,000 feet?
Seriously impressive.
And there's crossbreeding, too. They breed them with domestic cattle to create hybrids called Baduzo or Shari Gai.
And these hybrids are useful, how?
They're really adaptable, good for the agropastoral systems at different altitudes. A bit more versatile, perhaps.
As a whole integrated system. But you mentioned the wild yak. Conservation status.
Yes, that's the concerning part. The wild yak, Bos mutus, is listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List.
Vulnerable. So there's a real need for protection.
Definitely. Protecting their habitat, maintaining genetic diversity, it's crucial. It underlines that they're more than just economically useful. They're ecologically significant.
A decline would impact the ecosystem, not just livelihoods.
For sure. These high-altitude ecosystems are fragile. Fewer yaks could affect grazing patterns, maybe even water cycles downstream. It also points to bigger issues like climate change impacting mountain wildlife, something to keep in mind.
Understood. Okay, let's pivot now. From high mountains to outer space, ISRO's SpaDeX mission.
Yes, space docking experiment. They just completed the second successful docking.
Docking, so linking two satellites together in orbit.
Exactly. It's a technology demonstration. They use two satellites, SDX-01, the chaser, and SDX-02, the target, to prove they can rendezvous, dock, and then undock in low Earth orbit.
Rendezvous first. So finding each other, maneuvering precisely.
Extremely precisely. That's often the trickiest part before the actual physical connection, the docking.
Tell me about the satellites and the launch.
They're small satellites, about 220 kilograms each, launched together on a PSLV C-60 rocket.
Into what kind of orbit?
A circular orbit around 460-kilometer altitude with a 45-degree inclination. That inclination gives good coverage for testing.
Okay, so the primary goal was just proving the undocking works. Any secondary objective?
Oh, yes. They also aim to demonstrate transferring electric power between the docked spacecraft.
Interesting. Like refueling, but with power.
Sort of, yeah. Also developing and testing control systems for the combined docked spacecraft and testing payload operations after they undock. Useful stuff for future missions.
Like deep space missions, perhaps.
Potentially, yes, or building space stations, servicing satellites. This capability is fundamental.
And where does this place India, globally speaking?
This makes India the fourth country to successfully demonstrate satellite docking, after the US, Russia, and China. So it's a pretty significant club.
A major milestone for ISRO. Does this open doors for things like, say, satellite servicing, repairing or refueling satellites in orbit?
Absolutely. That's one of the key potential applications. Imagine extending the life of expensive satellites or assembling larger structures in space. Docking is step one.
And achieving this autonomously, without constant ground control, that's also a big deal, right?
A very big deal. It shows a high level of sophistication in their control systems. Less reliance on ground intervention means more flexibility and capability.
Impressive stuff from ISRO. Okay, let's bring it back down to Earth for our final topic, the Strait of Gibraltar.
Ah, yes. A location that's been strategically vital for centuries. Basically, it's that narrow stretch of water connecting the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea.
And it separates Europe from Africa.
Correct. Spain and the British territory of Gibraltar are on the European side to the north.
And Africa.
Morocco and the Spanish enclave of Ceuta are on the African side to the south. A complex political geography right there.
You mentioned Gibraltar, the UK presence. How does that play into things?
It adds another layer, definitely. Historically, it's been a point of tension between the UK and Spain. While things are generally okay now, it's still a factor in regional security and how the strait is managed.
Got it. What about the dimensions? How narrow is it really?
It's about 58 kilometers long. The narrowest point is only about 13 kilometers wide. That's between Point Sayres in Morocco and Point Marroquí in Spain.
13 kilometers. That's incredibly close.
It is. It widens out at both ends, though. About 43 kilometers wide at the western Atlantic entrance, and maybe 23 kilometers at the eastern Mediterranean end.
And those points at the eastern end? The Pillars of Hercules?
That's the historical name, yes. Usually refers to the Rock of Gibraltar on the European side and Mount Hacho or Jebel Musa on the African side.
How deep is the water there?
It varies, but roughly between 300 and 900 meters deep. It's a significant channel, geologically speaking.
And how did it form? Tectonic plates?
Exactly. It's basically the result of the African plate pushing north against the European plate. That collision created the mountains and this gap.
I remember reading about a unique water flow pattern there, too. Something about salinity.
That's right. You have less salty Atlantic water flowing into the Mediterranean near the surface.
Okay.
And underneath that, denser, saltier Mediterranean water flows out into the Atlantic. It's a two-layer flow system.
Fascinating. And strategically, its importance hasn't faded.
Not at all. It's the only natural sea link between the Atlantic and the Med. One of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Think oil tankers, container ships.
Huge economic importance.
Yeah.
Any disruption there would cause ripples globally.
Massive ripples.
Yeah.
Global trade, energy supplies, naval movements, everything passes through there. And you have major ports like Tangermed in Morocco right on the strait handling enormous traffic.
So we've covered Yaks and Himalayan sustainability, India's space docking achievement, and the enduring importance of Gibraltar. 3 very different areas.
They seem different, but maybe there are connections.
That's a great question. Thinking about these 3 environmental balance in a fragile region, pushing technological boundaries in space, and controlling critical geopolitical choke points, what larger trends do you think these point to, especially for India's position in the world?
Well, one clear trend is interconnectedness. What happens with yaks in the Himalayas isn't just local, it links to global biodiversity climate discussions. Space tech isn't just national pride, it's about capability, collaboration, maybe competition on a global scale.
Into Gibraltar.
Gibraltar reminds us that geography still fundamentally shapes power and economics, even in our digital age. Control over pathways, resources, it remains key. For India, engaging actively in environmental stewardship, advancing its own high-tech capabilities like SpaDeX, and navigating these complex geopolitical realities like those around major straits, it all points to India playing a much more significant, multifaceted role globally.
A really insightful connection. So for you listening, as you continue your UPSC preparation, seeing these links between environment, tech, and geopolitics is crucial.
Definitely. Don't just learn the facts in isolation. Think about the why and the connections.
We hope this deep dive into the current affairs for April 23rd, 2025, Part 1, has been useful for you.
If you found it helpful, do consider liking and subscribing. We'll be back with more analysis to support your UPSC journey.
Remember, consistent engagement with current events analyzed like this is really vital for your success. Thanks for tuning in.